All right, I think we're live right now. I'll give it a couple seconds just to make sure. And I don't even know if the chat is going to pop up here the way this is all set up, but whatever. All right, that should be enough time. What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Body Lock. It's your man Ant Walker, joined by the homie Matt Wells. We are here to talk briefly about UFC 253 and all the chaos that just went down on the heralded return to One Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. So, Matt, always a pleasure to work with you, my man. Just overall impressions of the night. I mean, we had Israel Adesanya cement his middleweight title run again with style points against Paulo Costa, Jan Blachowicz, the latest in light heavyweight champions. So it's a lot of things happen on this card. Overall, what would you grade it as?
Oh man, overall, I would kind of give this card. I would give it a B, a solid B. I mean, it kind of dragged on for a while, to be honest with you. There were some fights that were just not exciting, but there were a lot of exciting moments, especially towards the end. But overall, I would give this card a B.
Yeah, I think that's a fair grade. That seems like a fair grade. My impression of it was that we started with a pretty weak prelim round. It was a couple good ones here and there, but it really dragged on. It felt like a chore getting through, and I think we were kind of spoiled from last week, where the prelims last week, I think there were only two decisions, and one of those was that back and forth war with Andre Ewell and Rivera, I believe was the other gentleman. But we just didn't have that. We had a lot of slow starts. We had some questionable fight IQ displayed. It was a pretty odd thing. But what we did have, though, the top two fights on the card, the title fights delivered in spades. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Talk about Israel Adesanya defeating Paulo Costa by TKO in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. 3 minutes and 59 seconds into the second round. What were your first thoughts watching that performance?
It was exactly what I expected to happen, to be completely honest with you. As soon as they booked this fight and announced it as official, I thought Adesanya was going to run through Costa. I mean, his style is just tailor-made for Adesanya's skill set. He is a plodding, brawling strike, just come forward, chin down type of guy. Adesanya, reach advantage, like an 8-inch reach advantage. He is a precision striker who knows how to use his distance and uses it to perfection. And he went out there and just picked Costa apart. And that's exactly what I thought was going to happen as soon as this fight was made official. I figured it would be like probably around the second round. I was actually thinking third round it would be over. In case if Costa did have a moment or two. I didn't want to completely say he was going to go out there and just get waxed like that. But I was not surprised at this outcome whatsoever. It was just a solid performance from Adesanya, making it look easy, man, against top contender.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And my initial thoughts when the fight was put together was similar to yours. I just thought Izzy was going to run through him. I just didn't see the path to victory for Paulo Costa outside of a puncher's chance. And we know as frequently as we hear that phrase, think about how infrequently that actually means anything when it's actually fight time. So outside of that, I just didn't see where Costa had a path to victory. We know about his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. However, we've seen precisely zero Jiu-Jitsu from him in the UFC. I don't even think he's gone for a takedown throughout his 5 or 6 fight run in the promotion. So that's just off the table. As far as I'm concerned, if we hear about it but we never see it, it doesn't exist. So exactly. Take that black belt off the table. We haven't seen any wrestling skills, but we had seen is brawling. We've seen him just march forward and throw power shots and hope the other guy falls. That isn't going to work against someone like Israel Adesanya. It just doesn't work. And I'm actually amazed by the amount of people that were really drinking that Kool-Aid. it's like mind blowing to me. So
Yeah.
of course the Romero fight, talking about Costa and Romero's fight at UFC 241, that was a very, very exciting fight. It was incredible. I was sitting right there by the cage and just like, oh my god, this was like a comic book fight come to life. But that's not how Israel Adesanya is going to fight you. He is not going to approach a fight like Yoel Romero. So when the one performance that people point to as something that makes Costa worthy of a title shot, it's not applicable here. And then you look at probably the closest that we can come up with to compare previous opponents is Uriah Hall. And if I'm remembering this correctly, Uriah Hall was piecing your man up until the point he got goaded into a brawl himself.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the funny thing about the Costa and Romero fight, it was that they were showing the highlight of Costa, you know, unleashing this flurry on Yoel Romero. And the whole time Yoel Romero was laughing at him. Like nobody, like that was supposed to be like some big moment in this highlight package. I was like, Yoel is laughing right now. He is not in danger. But that's the highlight they chose to play right before that fight. So I was just like, you got to think, if Yoel Romero is in the pocket with his back against the fence, yelling, like laughing, what do you think Izzy's gonna do? He's not gonna sit there and laugh. He's gonna counter strike the hell out of and just clip his chin one time. But he did one thing that I really, really, really liked from Adesanya. Those moments where his back was against the fence, he didn't play around there. He was really quick to find that exit, and as soon as he saw that exit, he dipped out and circled around. Whether it be a couple of times he had to catch a kick and just throw it and use that to get off the fence. But it was just a high fight IQ from Adesanya. Yeah, man, it was a brilliant display of martial arts skill and obviously talent.
All right, so let's go ahead and address what's going on in the chat right now. Shout out to Rob Iman. Rob Iman, definitely one of my favorite people that pop up in some of these chats. He would always watch my old post-fight show and wanted to cut everybody off the roster every time they lost. So hopefully Rob is feeling merciful tonight and letting some people who lost their fights keep their jobs. But he says he'd like to see Adesanya versus Cannonier and Whitaker's winner. And then we have Nathan Holloway on Facebook watching who asks who's next for Izzy. I think Iman answered that in his first comment there. Adesanya should be fighting the winner of Cannonier versus Whitaker, but maybe I should put a little caveat on that. If Cannonier comes out victorious in that, I'm not sure I want to see Whitaker have another run at Israel Adesanya just yet. What do you stand on that, Matt?
It depends on how the fight plays out. That's the main thing. If it's like a decision, like hard fought decision, and Whitaker doesn't look all that great, then yeah, I could agree with that. Obviously, on the flip side, if Cannonier wins in any form or fashion, yeah, he's definitely next. But I think for me, it depends on how that fight actually plays out.
Let me pull up the rankings really quickly here, just to get a picture of who else could be in that conversation. And I have a feeling we're going to come really light on names here. So Jack Hermanson, ranked number 4 right now. He just came off that victory over Kelvin Gastelum about a month and a half ago, something like that. Maybe he can slot his way there. I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to see Jack Hermanson with the title shot here.
He's got to get through Till too. Don't forget that.
You're right. He's got to get through Till. Till, if he emerges victorious from that, maybe we're having that conversation. Still not quite ready to have that conversation. Although I do think that makes for an excellent style matchup. Yoel Romero, I don't want to see him anywhere near a title fight for eternity. And yeah, that's your top 5 right there. And Costa just got wiped out tonight, so that's really it. But I think we're running into something here. And perhaps a lot of people will say this is premature to start talking like this, but I'm ready to have this conversation right now. Israel Adesanya is establishing serious middleweight GOAT skills right now.
Oh, for sure. I thought you were going somewhere else with that, but yeah, for sure.
Where'd you think I was going?
I just go ahead, finish your thought.
No, your thought was clearly more exciting than mine, so I want to know what you're talking about.
I thought you were going with, hey, let's throw Chimaev in the mix.
Why not? Why not? Why not? Yeah. Wow, that's a whole nother whole nother
See,
conversation. Right
see.
there. Yeah. Now you didn't mess up. I should have just finished my point. Now I'm all thrown off. But anyway, yeah, that I think we're running into an issue here where he's so dominant, he's so good, and he's so skilled that we're not really seeing a challenge for him. Because out of the names that we just mentioned, and some of the names that we haven't brought up too much yet, the bottom half of the rankings, is there anybody that you're favoring against Adesanya at this point?
No, not right now. There's not. I mean, the one guy that we were kind of looking at as that other prospect was Edmund Shabazian, and of course he took an L, and of course he's not ready. So it's kind of tough, man. And all the other names are guys. Well, we know how those fights are going to go. Like Derek Brunson at 7. Like we know how that fight's going to go.
Yeah, we've seen that before.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an improved version of Derek Brunson. We've seen
Chris Weidman. I mean, no disrespect. I mean, like we know how he is right now. He's got one foot out the door, essentially.
Come on, fam. Yeah, we don't want to do that. Nathan Holloway with another question here. Makes a lot of sense to ask this one. Does Izzy have to move up to find a true opponent?
Not yet. I mean, well, I think the answer to that is yes, but no to him moving up just yet. He talks about wanting the legacy of Anderson Silva at 185. So solidify that. I mean, he could go up and down, sure, I guess, but I'm not ready for him to move up just yet. But even then, I think the only difference is you're looking at guys with a little bit more power at 205. But again, like he's so much crisper of a striker than anyone in that top 15, really. It's just all those other guys have power. Jan Blachowicz, obviously, the new champ. I mean, hell, he can literally take your whole half of your body off with one kick. So that would be super dangerous. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that talk is a little bit premature right now, but probably not as premature as the normal move up, the champion move up to the next weight class talk. I quite honestly think that if he gets past Cannonier, Hermanson finds his way to a title shot. At that point, we've seen what Izzy can do at middleweight, and unless like a Chimaev, just burst through the rankings at 185, it just doesn't make sense. At least looking to these huge challenges, which then makes it feel like an Anderson Silva title reign, where right. It was almost a foregone conclusion what was going to happen to whoever was put in front of him. And I think we're so far in that direction right now that it's no turning back at that point. So I'm sure there will be more comments about Israel Adesanya, probably other thoughts that might randomly pop in my head, and maybe I will take an unprofessional pivot to change the topic. But for right now, I'm going to take a professional pivot to talk about the light heavyweight title that was vacant until Dominick Reyes fell to some strikes from Jan Blachowicz in the second round. He has become the first person to hold the light heavyweight title, not named John Jones or Daniel Cormier, in a very long time. I think around 9 years or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
I forget the exact, but it's around there.
Yeah. So this is actually. Well, before we talk about the implications for the division, let's talk about the fight itself and how it played out. My initial impression of this matchup was that Dominick Reyes, coming off of that fight against John Jones, where he, on a lot of people's scorecards, mine included, should have defeated John Jones. I think he would have learned a lot of lessons, improved his game, taken that valuable experience, and still being so young in his career, we'd see leaps and bounds of improvement over him for at least his next 5 or 6 fights. That's sort of what I was expecting. Jan Blachowicz has performed marvelously lately, even though that one really, really bad pedestrian decision win over Jacare late last year existed, and we'll try to forget that ever happened. But anyway, Jan Blachowicz, the story seemed to be kind of written about him before. I mean, this is a guy who is 37 years old, who had been around the block a little bit, had a fairly rough start to his UFC tenure, and now we see the older guy absolutely work over the younger, supposedly improving fighter. Matt, what did you think watching this one?
This one shocked me, to be honest with you. I thought Reyes was going to go out there and do what he did to Jon Jones. Like, I scored that fight for Reyes 48-47 when he fought Jon Jones back in Houston. And I was surprised that he got clipped. And I think part of that was that, he got clipped pretty hard. And then he kind of turned on that, all right, I'm ready to brawl mode. And I think if he didn't do that, maybe we'd be talking about a different story, or at least obviously the fight would have lasted a lot longer. But he seemed to just say, fuck it, and let's just start trading right here and right now. Got his nose broken for his troubles in that nasty nose break too. I mean, I can relate, but I think that if he doesn't do that, maybe there's a different outcome potentially. But Jan cracked him to the body with those body kicks. Like, they were so nasty, and it just shows that power, because he landed that one. And then that welt was just like, he just got hit with like a 100-mile-per-hour fastball right in the ribs, right? Just that welt was nasty. And then he landed a few more after that. And you could see Reyes kind of dipping that arm down more, like after he landed. Like, yeah, that's really bothering me now. So just nasty, nasty work by Blachowicz, just picking him apart. And then, of course, like I said, finding his nose and spelling the end of the fight for him. It really did surprise me, man. I thought, Blachowicz had the power to obviously get him out of there, but I didn't see it going down that quickly in the second round.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't what I expected to happen. I thought Reyes would emerge victorious with a finish somewhere third, fourth round, maybe. And the thing that kind of startled me the most about this, I thought that Reyes just started slow. I think even when he got out there, it was like he just didn't seem to be firing on all cylinders. And maybe that's the result of Blachowicz with the body kicks. I mean, if you've ever sparred before, you'll know a good body kick will humble you very quickly. So perhaps, and that one kick that landed and left like pretty much like a photocopy of Blachowicz's fight kit on the side of Reyes's body. That's the sort of kick that will make you forget a game plan or make you hesitant. That's something that definitely can alter your course of action there. Now, I thought that Reyes didn't actually start fighting until the second round, but by then Blachowicz had already dialed into all the intangible cues that he needed to in order to get the job done. So by then he had his range, he had a feel for his timing. He was just in his zone at that point, and too little too late for Reyes to kind of make up that difference.
Yeah, and I think part of that was, he was going to come out and try to feel the power, I guess, so to speak, from Blachowicz, like not come out there too fast, because if he is cracked with something, like he really had to understand what Blachowicz was going to bring to the table. And I think he found that answer pretty quick with that body kick, right? He's like, oh shit, I gotta be really careful, because this dude can crack. And, I thought that was going to be also the plan coming in, really kind of, ramp it up as the fight went on, because keeping in mind how that Jon Jones fight played out, he looked good. He looked good early, and then he kind of started to fade a little bit. So I think that was kind of more the approach, take a more conservative approach early, and then kind of ramp it up and excel when it really counted, leaving, that lasting impression on the judges as it goes. But I mean, when you get clipped like that, man, there's no coming back from it. So at the end of the day, it's over. So unfortunately for him.
No, I think one thing to note here, and maybe this is something minor, it doesn't really have much to do about anything, but I'm always kind of paying attention to these sort of little nuggets of detail there. They said on the broadcast that Reyes changed his coaching situation after the Jones fight. That now his brother, who I think previously was his head coach, now he put him back in the spot of head coach. Do you think that had anything to do with the difference in the Reyes that we saw in Houston and the Reyes that we saw in Abu Dhabi?
I definitely does. I mean, when I heard that, I was like, why would you do that? You literally beat Jon Jones on a lot of people's scorecards. I mean, the only thing I would change was, like I said a second ago, was the approach and how you exert your energy in the early rounds versus the last two rounds. Like, that's really the only adjustment you need to make. Making a drastic change like that, unless if there was like some major behind the scenes fallout that nobody knows about and that we probably will never hear about, I don't understand making that major of a move, because that's nothing small.
Yeah, I was very, very confused by that. I think back to a lot of other camp switches that we've seen in the past before. The first thing that comes to mind is Melvin Gillard when he left Jackson Winklejohn for Black Zillions, and after losing to Joe Lozon. We'll typically see a camp switch after a bad loss, not a loss where you should have won on the scorecards and this was like a career defining moment. It just seems so bizarre. So maybe there was something behind the scenes that prompted that, but I have a feeling that had something to do with the Reyes that we saw tonight. Also, too, another thing with the camp switch is a lot of times it takes a fighter 2 or 3 fights into their new camp to really start showing the difference and really displaying the skills that they've been working on under the new gym. So this could be a symptom of that. Maybe we'll see something improve, but let's talk about what's the next thing going on for this division. So we've got a couple suggestions here. Rob Iman, also a classic matchmaker. So he's saying Blachowicz should be fighting the winner of Glover and Santos. I like that.
Yeah, that's the perfect match right now, because who did Blachowicz lose to last? Thiago Santos. So if he goes up there and wins, hey, that is a big fight right off the bat for the first title defense. If I'm assuming nothing is happening with Jon Jones, I don't expect anything to happen with Jon Jones to come back, unless if John's like, fucking, I want my title back.
Yeah, I think that's all a bunch of Twitter nonsense if he does even insinuate anything like that. Also, too, important to keep in mind that Thiago Santos won a scorecard in his title challenge against Jon Jones. So
yeah, good point.
If he were to get past Glover Teixeira, that fight makes a lot of sense. And even if Glover Teixeira is the one who emerges victorious in that, I do like that fight as well. Glover has looked pretty damn good for a man his age, and has been able to stop the momentum of a few prospects that otherwise would be in these conversations that we're having right now. So I think there's some interesting things going on for Blachowicz there, and this is sort of more interesting to me that he won this fight. It feels like, I don't know, like a reset almost for the light heavyweight division. I'd almost feel like if Reyes won, we would still be continuing the Jon Jones era in a way, because I don't know, the last person to lose to Jones now has the belt. It just would have felt off. But at the same time, maybe there would have been a little more continuity, like we saw when GSP vacated the belt after the close fight with Hendricks. And Hendricks ended up becoming the next champion after defeating Robbie Lawler. So maybe those two things, they don't quite coincide when I'm saying it, but it still makes sense in my own brain, so that's good enough. I think that the continuity might actually do the light heavyweight division disservice. A fresh reset. Blachowicz being a champion who has not fought Jones, there's still question marks about what that fight would look like, especially if we are to believe that Jones was looking diminished in his last several title defenses. So it keeps something interesting there for Jones intrigue, and at the same time lets that division move along with some fresh matchups and renewing old matchups like Thiago Santos. So I really like what this looks like for 205.
No, it's a fantastic thing for the division, because literally the whole division right now is wide open. I mean, you can eventually run it back with Reyes after he goes and gets a win or two, depending on what happens with Blachowicz in the meantime. But man, like the Santos fight is interesting, or the Teixeira fight is interesting now. That's a guy that Blachowicz has not fought yet in Glover Teixeira. So I'm just checking make sure I didn't see an early one. Yeah, he hasn't fought him. So that's an interesting fight right there. Rakic is there. I mean, Yuri, however you say his last name. I always mess up his last name, but Yuri is there. Like, there's so many different fights now that are all very interesting, simply because, like you said, that detachment from Jon Jones is something very, very needed for this division. And it's not necessarily that oh, these are like fresh contenders. You know, these are the same guys in the division for the most part. But hey, now there's a new guy on top holding the throne. Let me go out there and see if I can get my picture with the belt. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah,
it's good.
it's like a fresh coat of paint.
Yeah.
It feels like a fresh coat of paint. And then to have, you know, and of course, I do think we're about to run into this scenario with middleweight, as I said earlier. But for the light heavyweight division, to have someone that appears beatable, holding that belt, now it adds more weight to the fights underneath. So now, although this fight isn't necessarily, you know, for the next title shot, Volkan Ozdemir versus Nikita Krylov has a little more weight to it now. It feels like they're fighting towards something as opposed to the opportunity to lose to Jon Jones. So I do like where we're headed in that division. So let's see here. Now let's move along to
before we close the book on this, it feels like this could be an opportunity for what life looked like in the division before Jon Jones, where the title was just hot potato. Like nobody held onto the belt whatsoever. So I think we could be heading for that over the next year and a half or so.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right too. When you mix and match all the guys in the top 10 of 205, and who knows who's gonna be at the top of the mountain when all those pieces fall back down. So good point there. Now let's move along to, I guess I want to say the co-main event, whatever you call it. Yeah, when it's, you know, two title fights and then the fight underneath. The first time since DJ Cejudo 2 that flyweights have been on the main card in a non-title fight. That's something. On a pay-per-view, I should say, on a pay-per-view.
Adesanya rub there, City Kickboxing.
I mean, Brandon Royval submitted Kai Kara-France in I think in one fight of the night, if I read the tweets correctly.
Yep, sure did.
This was pretty exciting. It was so exciting because flyweights move like lightning and you can barely see what they're doing. I had no idea what happened in that crazy exchange that started off the fight. So Matt, please tell me that your eyes are better than mine. What happened there? How did you react to this?
Oh, that was one of the wildest exchanges because Royval was just rocked. And then on his way down, he was like, you know what? I'm still kind of here. Let me throw out the spinning back elbow and catch Kai Kara-France flush. And then he drops. And it's just chaos from then on out because I thought the fight was over as Royval was going down. But then he's like, nah, take that with you. I was like, oh, shit. And then all of a sudden, it's just like chaos from then on out. And like I believe Felder even said it as he was trying to call the fight. He was like, there's so much going on with these guys. You can't call play-by-play. You just have to like wait until a sequence is over and just be like, oh my God, that's how fast these guys move. And it's just so much stuff going on. And I will never for the life of me understand why this division never caught on with like casual fans. Like never. Like I get there's like the sizes thing. Like when you walk up on these dudes in public, they're like, whose little brother is this? But these dudes, the 125 division is nothing but fire. Like 95% of the time that there's a fight.
Yeah. I mean, their finish rate isn't always crazy through the roof, and maybe that's it. But when you talk about pure action, it doesn't really get much better than flyweight. Consistently, they deliver incredible performances. So, and for all those people that think that say, you know, it's a size issue, that you know, the little guy and they don't really care. That little guy will whoop your ass. Just remember that.
Yeah, facts.
That little guy would mop the floor with you. So keep that in mind. I was really excited for this one. I thought that Kai Kara-France would get the victory in this, and part of that was because the City Kickboxing vibe on this card. You know, those guys when they train all together for that one event, and they show up in force to that one event, and you see Eugene Behrman like 6 times throughout the evening, that's normally a very, very good night for them. They all just kind of feed into one another's energy and seem so supportive that it's like one wins and they all just have to win. So kind of disappointing for the camp. And I know they had another key loss earlier in the evening, but As far as Brandon Royval, what do you think is next for him?
Man, he was ranked ninth coming into this one. Just took out number 7. So I mean, it's got to be top 5, top 5-ish type thing. You got Pantoja sitting at 5 right now. Alex Perez right above him. Either one of those guys would be perfect for me. Both would be exciting fights. I'm just ready to see what's next for him, man. Especially going out there. You know, one thing, like especially with the smaller guys at Factory X, they've got a different type of swag with them, man. They really do. They're like, their confidence is through the roof, and that was just one thing that really I think kind of took home the fight for him tonight, was just that he just marched forward, just fearless. And he got clipped a couple of times for it, but just the balls to get up and keep marching forward and keep putting that pressure on high. I mean, shout out to Mark Montoya, man, teaching those guys up the right way up there. That's usually another guy, like you were saying with Eugene Behrman. Like when you see him walk to the cage with a bunch of fighters, it's usually good night. It's usually that with Mark Montoya too. You know, he'll win some and lose some here and there, but more often than not, man, Factory X is out there doing the thing, looking good doing it.
I think it's also important to note here that, as I said about the flyweights not being featured on the main card of a pay-per-view since DJ Cejudo 2, the fact that these gentlemen were featured on the pay-per-view main card probably means the UFC has some plans for the winner. Brandon Royval probably factors into the title mix. Granted, you have like 80% of the flyweight roster is ranked, in the UFC, but still, these guys must have been earmarked for something to get this placement. So I'd expect Brandon Royval to come up in some conversations as we head closer to Garbrandt challenging for Figueiredo's title. You also have the last person to beat Kai Kara France before Brandon. I'm going to mess up his name. Brandon Moreno. Yeah. So I'd expect to see some sort of Brandon on Brandon action before long, and perhaps that is going to determine who's going to take on the winner of Garbrandt and Figueiredo. So, and that is if Figueiredo wins, because if Garbrandt wins, he ain't sticking around in flyweight. He's going to parlay that into a bantamweight title shot, but that's another story. We'll save that for another video clip on Body Lock. But let's keep things pushing. Ketlen Vieira gets a win over Sijara Eubanks. 29-28 was my scorecard on this one. I believe you had the same scorecard as well.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yeah. To me, this fight was determined by Ketlen Vieira's size. There was a clear size disparity. Eubanks also was someone who came into the UFC at 125, had trouble making that weight. So now here she is at 135. So you see her body isn't truly that of a bantamweight fighter. And this played out like someone who was outsized. Vieira was using long strikes, keeping her to the outside when she felt like it. He straight up bullied her down with the takedowns when she got them. And I think it made Eubanks kind of gun shy until the rare bit of good corner advice in mixed martial arts, her corner telling her that she was down 2 rounds and she needed to finish. And she came out guns blazing in that 3rd round. Picked that one up on my scorecard. Matt, how did you see this fight?
Yeah, I saw it the first 2 rounds for Vieira. Like you said, just the size, the pressure. She made Eubanks fall into that shell, man. Eubanks kind of gets into the shell where she's content with staying in the middle of the cage, not really pressing forward too much and just letting her opponent come to her. She does that quite often, and that's kind of one of the more frustrating things for me, because I think she has the skills to take the fight wherever she wants to, I think, but she just doesn't do that for whatever reason more often than not. She likes to just stand in the center, trade, and whatever, let the chips fall where they may. And I think that that's not the right approach for her, going forward. She needs to work on that and be a little bit more assertive on where the fight takes place. I mean, this is a fighter that has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, we never really see you use it. Why? Like, why are you not more aggressive? Like, go in there and shoot for some takedowns. Like, don't just stand in the center and try to outbox everybody. I mean, if you can do it it calls for it, good, but mix it up a little bit more. Change things up. Like, that's why she went on that 2-fight losing streak. Those decision losses, and everybody was like, "Oh, you got to win this one, or you're out the door." And that's that kind of vibe I got from her tonight, where it was like that type of fight. And I mean, not to take anything away from Vieira, because she's really, really good, and she's the more aggressive fighter here. She's only got one loss to her record, whereas Eubanks is flirting with 500 again. So, it just is what it is.
Yep. So I think the next thing that seems to be on the minds of a lot of people, Ketlen Vieira seems to be on the short list of people who will be standing in front of Amanda Nunes in the near future. I can't really say that that she's ready for that opportunity, but then again, we're talking about the greatest fighter in women's mixed martial arts history. So who is ready for that? I guess as good as anybody else that you could throw in there. Rob in the chat suggesting that Vieira fight Raquel Pennington. Not mad at that at all. It just leaves Nunes with no one to punch on, and that's the real tragedy here. But then again, her and her wife Nina Ansaroff celebrating the birth of their child. I think just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so big shout out to the Nunes family there. So I imagine that she's going to enjoy time with the baby and, get into the family vibe. So perhaps Vieira versus Pennington makes sense. And if Vieira wins, then, okay, we can throw her in there against Nunes. But this is, once again, we've had this conversation about the direction middleweight is heading. We had this conversation about the direction that light heavyweight was heading. Women's bantamweight kind of just getting the opportunity to lose to such a dominant champion that belongs on all-time great lists. So
yeah. So I mean, I'm just waiting for the leaked DMs from Amanda Nunes to pop up to Dana White, be like, "Hey, what about that fight with Julia Avila? What about that?" And then seeing Dana be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Got to make a special card in LA for that one.
Yeah, no joke,
man. All right, well, we'll get into the first bout to kick off the pay-per-view, and that was Hakeem Dawodu with a split decision over Zubaira Tukhugov. I'm sure I mispronounced that.
Close enough.
Close enough. I had this fight for Tukhugov. I had it 29-28 for him. The first two rounds I gave to him, and I thought Dawodu put on a round-winning performance in round 3.
Yeah.
That's your scorecard as well?
Yeah, that was mine. I mean, I thought the second round was close, but I thought Zubaira did a little bit more in the second round. And then I saw some people score all 3 rounds for Dawodu, and I was just like, what is this scorecard? But yeah. I mean, even one official judge had that. I don't see how you score all 3 for Hakeem there. But yeah, that was kind of a weird thing to happen. But it was one of those fights, man, where it was really close. A lot of in the pocket action, real technical striking, real back and forth. But I mean, it just comes down to like, which punch did you see land, I guess, sort of thing.
Right.
For me, I mean, maybe if I go back and watch it, I have a different perspective. But I thought Zubaira was landing more strikes in those exchanges. I'm not saying Hakeem wasn't landing, but there was more often for me where it seemed like Hakeem was just on the edge of strikes, just barely missing a couple of times, whereas Zubaira was landing flush with his. But what do I know? I was on the wrong side of the split there. So
yeah, it was definitely a fight where I anticipated the scorecards would be all over the place, but I wasn't too mad at a 30-27 for Hakeem, just because it was that close, and it's so subjective what you're grading on. Then on top of that, the way both of them were handling things defensively, I mean, those shots are just barely missing them. They're rolling off shots. They're leaning out of certain punches and whatnot. And it's hard to tell especially for a judge sitting in one spot of the cage, to tell you exactly how everything landed or whether it landed at all. So I think I think a 30-27 for either man makes a lot of sense here. And that's really wild to say. I'm normally the first person to scream about those like just bizarre, just random 30-27s that always seem to sneak their way into every single mixed martial arts card. But this is the one time where I'm like, I'm not that mad at it, even though that's not what I had. So I'll give it reluctantly. I'll give it to him.
Yeah, I thought we were heading for my absolute favorite judging scorecard, which is the loser of the split decision with the 30-27. That's my actual absolute favorite thing in MMA judging, is one judge seeing every round, but two other ones seeing just one. But shout out to Dan Thomas, see you in the chat.
Oh yeah, Dan Thomas, that's the homie right there. Adam Joe as well, with you on the 30-27. He says 30-27 was sus. And for all you who are uninitiated with hip hop culture, that means suspect. So you're learning something. Yes. Big Daddy came to educate y'all. You see what I'm doing here? All right. So Dan Tom, let's get his opinion on this. He says, scored it for Tukhugov, but glad the judges sided with effective striking and overall damage. Happy for Hakeem. I can't argue with that. And in case you continue to be uninitiated, check out some of Dan Tom's work. He's one of the best technical analysts that exists in the sport. So go ahead, give him a follow. And he's a great guy to have a beer with as well. So shout out to Dan. So Rob Imanson, 29-28 Dawodu was his scorecard. That's the scorecard that makes more sense to me. I figured it was going to be a 29-28 for either man. I just saw it for Tukhugov, although I really wanted to see it for Dawodu because that guy has a lot of personality, a lot of style that I'm really rocking with. I'm really rocking with that.
Facts. Speaking up for things that needed to be speaking up about earlier in the week.
Oh yeah, you welcome to the Snowflake Cup podcast.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay, so let's keep it pushing there. Brad Riddell, another city kickboxing guy, he gets the win over Alex De Silva by decision. This was one that I also differed from the judges. My scorecard was 29-28 for Alex De Silva with an asterisk. We'll get into that asterisk in a second. Matt, what was your scorecard for this one?
My scorecard was Brad Riddell by TKO.
Exactly.
That was my scorecard.
That was the asterisk right there. Because while if I'm scoring round by round, the 29-28 for either man makes a lot of sense. And quite frankly, I thought the first two rounds, aside from where the fight should have ended, who was going to be Alex De Silva, and then the last round for Brad Riddell. Well, karma is something else, and karma got the right man to win this fight. The non-eye poke ended up being a knuckle to the eye that stopped Alex De Silva in his tracks. The referee saw it as an eye poke, stopped the action, and then they reset. I'm glad that the right man won. Even if my scorecard doesn't reflect that, I'm very happy that the right man won. This is not the Mike Rodriguez, Ed Herman situation all over again. This isn't a foul that didn't happen, stopping a finishing sequence, and then the one who was finished now suddenly becomes the winner. So this was good. This was karmic justice. I liked how this played out. I think the difference in this fight was athleticism versus just pure skill. De Silva's looked like the more athletic guy. He was more explosive. He was sharper and quicker in the early going, and then Riddell just kind of downloaded that information. And about the second half of the fight, right around the halfway mark in the second round, then the tide started changing, and he had enough information to start countering effectively, nullifying the speed, and then overtaking him to where he clearly won that last round. So Matt, any impressions that you had about this fight that you want to share?
No, it was just one of those fights, man, where you see a guy adjust as the fight's playing out. Like you said, you get some information, take it back to your corner. I don't remember, or I don't recall what his corner was saying. I don't even know if there was like a commercial on at the time. I forget. But whatever happened in between, after that first round, in between the second and then going on to the third, obviously was paying huge dividends for Riddell because he adjusted and started taking over the fight. And I think that's just one of those things that you really got to appreciate, because there's still a lot of corners and a lot of fighters that don't make those adjustments as fights play out. So when I see it, I like to call it out. But I am glad, like you said, that this wasn't another Ed Herdman situation because, you know, it just brings up this ugly, stupid rule with the instant replay thing. You know, we can pause a fight for 5 minutes for an inadvertent eye poke or an accidental low blow. We can pause a fight for 5 whole minutes. 5 whole minutes in real time is a long time. So you're telling me that we can't look at a replay and come back with a decision on whether or not the fight's over, or we can continue in 5 minutes? And I hate the idea that if we go to replay, the fight's over. Why? That makes no sense. Make it make sense. Somebody, chat, help me. Help me make a sense.
Like, why even have it if it only can be used for fighting ending sequence? What's the point?
Exactly. There's no reason.
Absolutely no sense. And then we've seen where that can even go sideways from the fiasco from last week with I forget the Chris to Fuji or something like that. The referee that's been like the perpetual screw up.
Oh, Chris Tione.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chris Tione. The essence followed you all the way to Abu Dhabi.
That's a powerful man. I really just think he's Mario Yamasaki in a costume, but that's another story. So let's go ahead and move along there. Jake Matthews gets the win over Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez that looked a lot different than the Diego Sanchez that we're used to, even in this version of Diego Sanchez that clearly is not a top level fighter anymore. So the scorecards read 30-26 always. That was the same scorecard I had as well. Matt, any thoughts about Diego Sanchez dropping a pretty lopsided fight here to Jake Matthews?
I mean, Diego looked out of shape. You know, he looked about 3 months in to his 9-month term. I don't know, like, what was going on with Diego there. I don't know how much of that had to do with his training with, the famed Joshua Fabia, but didn't produce any good results whatsoever. He just looked off. He looked like a guy that should have retired 5 years ago. I don't know what else to say other than please fire Joshua Fabia and retire. Yeah. Diego Sanchez, your career has been a long and fruitful one, and please get out and save yourself from any further brain damage, please.
I can't disagree with any of that at all. I want to add something else about this fight too, because this was really strange to know. One big thing for Sanchez about this fight was that Stephan Bonner was a part of his camp, and he did a lot of his training with Bonner, who actually is a world-class martial artist and was a top fighter in the UFC for a little while there, one of the more popular people to emerge from the Ultimate Fighter. I did think that had some positive aspects for him in this fight. He didn't look technically just way behind like he has before, like he has in this recent run. He didn't. It wasn't like he was. Granted, he did try that running jump knee or whatever that was that he's tried to get away with a few times. He did try that, but he did seem a little more economical with his strikes. He didn't just charge forward with his chin up like he tends to do at times. He seemed a little more disciplined, but just physically he wasn't there. So I mean, it could be the combination of him looking terribly out of shape. Like he looked like a totally different person in the body. I mean, we've never seen him with that much body fat. It just, body wise looked terrible. Or it could just be the age, the brain damage that's accumulated a very long career. I mean, but either way, the writing's on the wall. Diego Sanchez should no longer be fighting. I did catch a brief glimpse of the post-fight press conference. Dana White was on the podium and did say that he was going to have some conversation with some folks at the UFC offices about whether or not Sanchez will be able to fulfill the rest of his, I believe, 4-fight contract.
Oh, no, God.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen there, but if he is going to fight again, I say the Damian Maia fight, the fight that Damian Maia originally wanted for his retirement fight. Let it be Diego's retirement fight as well. Could be a fun grappling showcase for both men and a nice send off from an action standpoint. Rob is suggesting Matt Brown. I believe we've seen that before. Didn't we see Matt Brown KO Diego Sanchez before? Am I imagining that?
Let me go to the internets here and see. But I want to say that sounds correct. Let's see here. Matt Brown, yes. Fight Night 120, 2017, November.
Okay, yeah. So
that elbow from hell. Yes, of course. How could I forget that?
Yeah. So we've seen that before, and I mean, yeah.
I was going to say that was going to be the result. Would be a vicious knockout because Matt Brown didn't play around. Like he's coming in there to take your head off.
Yeah. So I say the Damian Maia fight because the likelihood that either guy gets knocked out is low. It's going to most likely play out on the ground, and we can send them off without feeling too bad about ourselves when it's all said and done. So I'm okay with that. Master B saying Diego Sanchez was a punching bag. Yes, he absolutely was. What else we got here? Oh, Scott Brown saying Conor still wants the Diego fight. That's probably true.
Dude, I started laughing about a minute into the fight at just the sheer ridiculousness of Conor even saying that he wanted that Diego fight, judging by what we saw from Diego tonight. Like he went out there like looking nothing like his former self whatsoever, especially when it comes to, the body physique. I was like, could you imagine if that was Conor on the other side of the cage right now?
Yeah.
Just my God.
That's to be anybody who would put that fight together should be arrested immediately. That's BKFC worthy right there.
Like I will agree with Dana and the DMs on that one right there. Like you should absolutely lose your license if they scheduled that.
Yeah, that's a travesty to say the least, man.
What does that say? Do we need to get Conor checked out for some mental health things if he's calling out Diego or suggesting Diego as an opponent?
Or he's chasing his proper 12 with antifreeze like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, so before we move on from that, because I don't really think there's much more we can say about this fight, and that's not really much more I care to say about the fight. I do want to say that Josh Fabio tried to run up on Matt Serra. Yeah, bad mistake right there. He quickly changed his mind. He did not want that smoke at all. So
my goodness, that's not a good look.
All right, now I'm really gonna screw this name up. Ludovic Klein.
Yeah, nailed the last name.
Oh yeah, I got the last name right. Klein defeated Shane Young by TKO in the first round, a minute and 16 seconds in, with quite a beautiful video game combination there, set up by a jab to a back fist to a head kick, if I'm not mistaken, like a switch stance head kick. Gorgeous stuff there, Matt.
I mean, yeah, like this is one of those fights where I love when commentary and inaction in the cage lines up perfectly, because you get the teaser from the commentators talking about the head kicks that this guy has, and then 5 seconds later, wham, there's that head kick, and it kind of rocks him. And it didn't necessarily rock him, but it did hurt him to where he had to kind of pause. And in that pause, that's when he unleashed that next little 2 or 3 piece to send him to the canvas. So I love when that kind of stuff happens. We've seen that in the past where, Joe Rogan will be talking about somebody's specific skill, or, like right before a knockout comes, and it's just like, I forget which fight that was, but when Rogan was talking about somebody's
Barboza Terrietum.
Yeah, it was just like that. And he get knocked out just like that or whatever, that perfect timing. I love that. So
I don't know if Rogan did a fight companion for this card, but if he did, he probably was screaming like a madman on that combination. And quite frankly, if I wasn't in the house with a child that I was trying to get to sleep for so long, I would have been screaming too. All right, so let's move on to another fun fight from the evening, and that was William Knight versus Alexa Kamor.
Yeah,
and William Knight dominated this decision, 29-28 on one scorecard, 30-27 on the other two. I had 30-27. I believe I saw some media scorecards that were like 30-26. So 29-28, not doing this any justice. I don't know what round they thought Alexa won, but this was William Knight from pillar to post. You talk about what looks to be an absolute specimen of a human being. I mean, not since Ant Walker have we seen a body like that. This
Oh my
guy,
God. This guy.
you know,
This guy.
I had to. I started training again. Now I'm feeling myself.
Okay.
So, so William Knight, man, you see this raw skill. He had a development contract with the Contender Series. Came back, just what 3 weeks ago, and got a quick finish. And now in a month, he's got 2 extra wins on his resume, and definitely put on a memorable performance. Matt, I'm just going to ask you one quick question here. Did you also cringe as the second round came to an end and Kimura's arm almost got ripped off?
Of course. I thought that was the end of the first. No, that was just, I don't know, whichever round it was. Anyways, yes, I was about to start screaming at the screen. Why are you going for an arm, like a key lock submission with 10 seconds left when he is obviously in full mount, and you can just start raining down some heavy ass elbows for 5 or 6 seconds and potentially in the fight right there. But as soon as he locked it in and started cranking, I was like, oh my God. If he had 5 more seconds, that fight would have been over right then and there. But it looked like he was going to tear his whole shoulder, tear up all his shit, like right there. So that was pretty freaky.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy there, and it's scary to see a guy who it looked like from like a technique standpoint, definitely not polished.
Yeah, that's what
Certainly not refined, but his pure raw strength and the fact that he was able to keep up that output of power and that output of strength throughout the entirety of the 15 minutes, this man is a problem. This man is a huge problem. And as his technique improves, beware, beware, beware. Start shopping right now for prosthetic limbs. Somebody is going to be forever altered by this man.
Yeah, no doubt. So if he knows how to lock up submissions like that, that's pretty scary. But also take into account those leg kicks that he was throwing, which are super heavy, like super, super heavy. My thing is that I was just noticing a lot of the technical flaws in this fight. Like you said, there was a lot of sloppiness to it. When Kamer would kind of charge forward with a 2-3 punch combination, like he would back straight up with his chin kind of back.
Mm-hmm.
Like that has to stop immediately. You cannot do that, because if you get somebody that knows how to keep following up, keep coming forward, they're going to clip you. So that's got to be fixed immediately. Like that's day one on Monday when you get back in the gym. How do we fix this? So that's what needs to be the priority. But there's also a couple other little things, like in the clinch, like he was getting throws, but like the technique wasn't perfect. The technique wasn't clean. But I mean, it worked because he's like super swole, right? He's a freaking bodybuilder in there, and can just you here now type thing.
Like he muscled his way out of a rear naked choke.
Yeah, and then that's gonna get him out of a lot of bad situations. Like, white belt technique, right? Technique where you power through shit. Like he's gonna be able to power through a lot of shit, and it just doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do about it. It's kind of like it was reminding me a little bit of Derek Lewis. Like when Derek Lewis is just done being on the mat, he's like, all right, time to get up. So I think he's going to have a lot of that to his game. But a lot of that stuff on the feet has to get cleared up, man. Especially the backing straight up with your chin in the air. That cannot fly anymore. If he fixes that, that's if he fixes just that one part for his next opponent, it's gonna be really, really scary.
Yeah. So I'm very curious to see what happens with Knight moving forward, because I think for a lot of good reasons, I'm very high on this man, what he's capable of, and I feel the sentiment is shared amongst my brethren in the MMA world. So let's move along here to Juan Espino. His return since winning the Ultimate Fighter in 2018. 2 years ago, this man won the tournament, has been gone with injury since, but he returned to the octagon with a scarf hold submission over Jeff Hughes. I believe the second scarf hold in UFC history, if I'm not mistaken. Alexei Oleinik against Anthony Hamilton was the first one.
Yeah.
All right. So Espino saved us from what would have been a dragging, miserable affair. the way this fight started off, I mean, I was still just on my emotional down from the opening fight, and we'll talk about that as briefly as possible in a second here. But I was still in a mild state of depression from that. So when this fight started off so sloppy, it's like, oh god, not again. And then Jeff Hughes taps out to a scarf hold. So thank you that was off the screen as fast as possible. Matt, do you think Espino? Do you think he's got a place in the heavyweight division? Could this be just a mild start to something a little more spectacular at heavyweight?
Maybe styles make fights, right? And I mean, heavyweight's going to be either it's going to be good or it's going to be really, really bad. And when heavyweight fights get bad, it's terrible. So I mean, I think he can do some things. I mean, if you go out there and lock in a scarf hold, second one ever, you're obviously dangerous in some areas, right? Like you said, this fight was going to be like, we were both reeling off that first fight. Like you said, this is going to be a drag. Man, I'm just glad he got it done. I was hoping for some kind of crazy knockout if it went to the mat, just like ground and pound out or something like that. It's like, please save us from this. Like, I'd rather watch another 15 minutes of video package right now. I really would. Like, let me go get, go take out the trash, whatever other chores I can do real quick. But thank you for saving us for that, for sure. And shout out to Aaron Bronstetter, who tweeted out a crazy little stat. Like you mentioned, Espino won tough, but he is older. When he won tough, he's older than Diego Sanchez, who won the very first tough, which is just mind-blowing how that works in this game. It's crazy. But I mean, I guess heavyweight's a different beast altogether. So
yeah,
is what it is.
Heavyweight, you don't hit your prime till you're 52. So that seems to be what's going on there. All right, so let's just go ahead and Danilo Marcus. He gets a decision over Kadis Ibrahimov. 29-28 on two scorecards, 30-27 on the last. I know I did score this fight. You can go on MMA decisions and see what my scorecard is, although they still credit me as somebody at Sherdog. I'm not at Sherdog anymore, so change that to Body Locker MMA on Point. I tweeted them about that, but they didn't do it anyway. That's probably the most exciting thing I have to say about this fight was my struggles with MMAdecisions.com. This fight was really, really bad. And Ibrahimov 0-4 in the UFC. And he was fighting a man who hadn't been active for 2 years. Allow me to do my best Rob Iman imitation right now. Ibrahimov should be cut. This is not a man who is UFC caliber. This has been proven time and time again. Why are we doing this? What sort of dirt does he have on Mick Maynard? Because anything else makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, man, it just doesn't. I don't get it. He is 8-4 in all four of those losses coming to the UFC. Maybe that's part of it, right? But no, yeah, he's got to be gone. You lose 4 in a row. Yeah, you don't get another crack back at the UFC unless if you win 4 more in a row, all by first round knockout.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, that's just got to be the rules right there. Sorry, you go out there, first fight of the night, absolute stinker. Everybody was like, I mean, this is one of those fights, right? I was cool with not getting back home. I was out with, my girl. We were doing stuff around the city, whatever, driving around, going, having lunch and everything. And, it just so happened that we got to the house right before this fight started. And I was like, okay, perfect timing. I was in no rush to get back home. I was like, man, we really could have made that extra stop at that one store you wanted to go to. So it's just, I was like, man, God damn it. But hey, I mean, the most exciting thing about this fight for me was that Brazilian Mark Montoya, got a win. So good on him.
Yeah, that was something. So, I mean, we've talked about every fight on this card now. Any other topics that relevant to tonight that you want to? Okay, we got something on the screen there. John Jones just tweeted, "Would you guys be a no if I went back and grabbed my belt real quick?" See, this is the sort of nonsense that we were talking about.
Exactly.
No, I don't believe you. I wouldn't be annoyed at all. I actually would like to see John Jones fight Jan Blachowicz. That sounds like a damn good fight. However, it's not going to happen. So just go and keep drinking them protein shakes. Do your squats, and you'll be at heavyweight soon enough. So let's just leave it there. All right.
Yeah. Because if you go back and win it, like we're gonna delay your heavyweight debut another year. Nah, I'm good. I'm good on
it. Now we're excited about 205 again, and you're gonna ruin that? No.
Oh, and then if he did that, could you imagine the trolls? You ran from you ran from Reyes. You ran from Reyes.
Okay, you ran from Reyes. Like, just
that would give the trolls all the ammunition. So no, John Jones, just stay moving up the heavyweight.
Just keep doing the push-ups, man. Go, do the heavyweight thing. Like
all the horse meat that Overeem left at Jackson Wink
under the cage. It's another story there. So, any other topics that come to mind? I mean, we're gonna hit some topics, like one-off topics for Body Lock, like we always do, with our little video clips there. So you'll see more of those in a week. But anything specific to 253 that you want to get into before we call it a night?
No, man, I think we hit on everything. Shout out to everybody joining us on the chat, man. It was fun doing this. It's just it's good and kind of bad, where it was like coming into this thing, I was like, this is the most predictable main event in a long time for a title fight. It played out, largely like I expected. Obviously a little bit quicker than I expected, one round earlier than I was predicting. But man, Israel Adesanya needs his respect, man. I don't know what he has to do to get these trolls off his back. But there were so many people coming into this fight, man, that was just like, oh, Costa's going to go out there and knock him out. Dude, nothing about this fight said that Costa was ever going to have a chance. Nothing whatsoever. So shout out to Israel Adesanya doing exactly what he needed to do. Nothing more, nothing less, and taking care of business.
Absolutely. That just, the amount of people that were on the Costa train for this fight, startling. Just absolutely startling. The reaction I got when I think the first time I said on air somewhere that Costa was going to get destroyed in this fight, believe I was on Between the Links, the MMA fighting show. And I definitely remember comments popping up like, what's he talking about? Costa's going to do. No, he didn't. He didn't. He never was going to. There's nothing that we've seen in his previous body work to suggest that he'd be able to handle what Israel Adesanya has to offer. So that's just that. As far as the fight, the whole card goes, like I said before, it was a fairly decent card, but elevated by the main and co-main. So I think it will have a more favorable place in our memories come the end of the year, and we start doing our yearly wrap up. So we might remember this main card at least more fondly than it felt as we were getting through it up until those title fights. But anyway, that will do it for this edition of the Body Lock post-fight show. Definitely want to thank everybody in the chat who chimed in, everybody who watched but didn't chime in the chat. Go ahead and say something next time. We're nice, we're friendly, we're snow.
Sure. Get some thumbs up on the video before you head out too.
Go ahead, thumbs up, like it, subscribe, share it, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. So as the saying goes, at least my saying goes, I don't know who else say this, nobody else better say it because this is what I say. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'm Matt Walker, he's Matt Wells. Thank you for tuning into Body Lock. Have a good night, y'all.